Assalamu alaikum, guys. Welcome to this week's episode on the road to happiness. I am Shafina, and this is the lovely Naseem. So we're just going to go ahead and get started on the topic. And Naseem, would you like to share the topic?
Yeah, so today I wanted to talk about the number one reasons for breakup in a marriage. The number one reason, and
The number.
the number one reason for breakup for marriage, and the number one reason that it can't be repaired.
Okay, this is interesting.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. Yeah.
So we've spoke about this on a kind of lower level in one of our podcasts before, but I just wanted to go into it with a little bit more depth and the reasons why.
Mm.
So I don't know if you'll be surprised to know, or you think, yeah, I agree with you, but the number one problem within marriage is communication issues.
I think that's a huge that I can agree with this in terms of just generally relationships and friends and things that we have in general. So communication, when there's lack of communication, there's lack of understanding, and then there's conflict
Yeah.
from experience of like scenarios of friends and stuff, for sure.
So I think going into marriage and into relationships, everyone's looking at it quite lightly.
Mm.
They're not really understanding. So the biggest thing to know when you're to sort of look into when you're getting to know someone is find out their ways of communication. You've heard of love language, right? So people like,
Yeah, love language. I've heard of that for sure. Yeah.
you've got your people who like giving gifts and people who like showing affection and so on and so forth. So what the main thing that as you're communicating with someone, I think that you need to identify is your communication style. So if you know that this person XYZ deals with things this way, they need some quiet, they need to take they need to go for a walk or go for a shower or just go and read a book or whatever and just kind of diffuse the situation, as opposed to some communication styles, which is, I want to deal with this now. You're going to talk to me now. I want to know how you're going to deal with this now, which just aggravates the whole situation. So as you get to know someone, I think it's really important that as you communicate, how would you behave in this scenario? How would you deal with this? Or what's your thoughts on that? How do you deal with things when you're angry or when you're upset? Like, what would be the best way to deal with things? So I think even I've heard people say that, look, even my parents or my siblings don't even understand when I say, look, when I'm upset, just leave me alone, or when upset, I want to sit and talk, or so on and so forth. Yeah. What's your thoughts on that?
You said something just like the fact that you were like saying, how do you deal with something when you're angry or things like that? So you're suggesting that it's important to have that conversation prior to making your decision on someone, for example. Yeah, see, uh, there are probably many people out there that probably don't have that conversation. And then they realize when the person does get angry and they're already in the situation, it's not the way they would prefer to be. Um, and you'll get people like, that will say, we need to discuss it now. And you're just like, no, now is not the time. For me personally anyway, I like to, if there should there ever be an argument and someone should get angry, I feel like it's better. I mean, I guess I don't know if there's a right or wrong way, but this is how I feel would be the best way, is everyone just calms down and just cools off. Then later on, when everyone's cooled down, thing to eat because you don't want to have a conversation when you're hungry.
Mm,
Um, like get into your best self zone
definitely.
and then
Yeah.
sit down, have a glass of water and be like, okay, let's discuss this.
Yeah.
What happened here? I'm annoyed about this and I would like to, I feel that that's more of a rational way to deal with it. Because anger and you'll see people like sometimes shouting or things like that. I feel that is just
Yeah.
not the not the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you do say something upline, or your partner says something upline, which is going to happen if you're in close proximity all the time, there's very few people that won't have that. But
Right.
depending on who you are, so for example, myself, I probably need about 20 minutes, half an hour, and now whoever is, whether I've started the argument or they started the argument, I'm just going to apologize and say, look, what I said, it was out of line, should not have said it. I completely apologize. Maybe we can talk about it like after breakfast tomorrow. There's no problem. So the biggest thing with the communication style is if you the coaching and support sessions I do, like this yesterday I was dealing with a client and she's like every other day he tells me, pack your bags, go home, pack your bags, go home. It's always like the divorce card is just like on the front of the table all the time. It's like a threat.
Mm.
They're married for a good 10 years now. She goes, and this is like happens every day, and I really need to figure out a way to deal with it. It could be that that's his now communication style and she's left it too late. This has now become a habit and maybe it's not going to change. But this is why prior to getting married or prior to sort of jumping into relationships, say, this is what I'm like when I get upset, or this is what I'm like when I get angry. And what I would like to do is go for a shower, go for a walk, and maybe talk about it the next day, you know. And some people say, no, they want to speak about it the night before. So maybe there could be some conversation. Say, look, I understand you think this, I think that. However, um, I don't think I'm going to be changing my mind on it. I think this is what's important to me.
Mm.
And then what you're doing is if the person's just coming out of the anger stretch, you're just going to put them back into it. Because wait a minute, like that doesn't work for me and so on, and you're just going back round in the circle again. So it's advisable just to, my personal opinion is from the cases I've dealt with, is apologize. Whether it was your fault or not, apologies, that diffuses everything. Because at the end of the day, you'll love that person for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you weren't forgiven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you need to forgive regardless of what's happened. Because you carry it within you, it's just going to consume you. So asking for forgiveness, asking that person to say, look, could we talk about it later? Or it might not need a lot of discussion. It was like, I was angry. I should have had this done yesterday. I didn't do it. You got upset. Moving forward, let's sit down. Let's put a plan. Let's get this done for next week, or let's get it done. Let's get it done, whatever it
Mm.
is. So I'll get round to it. I'll get round to it. I'll get round to it. That kind of stuff can cause problems as well. So
Mm.
I don't know. Maybe it's you talked about buying a house, for example, and one person saying, let's buy the house, and the other person saying, yeah, let's do it. But then nothing happens. 3 months goes by, 6 months goes by, 9. There's no house viewings, there's no looking at mortgages, there's no deposits talk, there's nothing. So nothing
Mm.
is happening in that area. Whereas if it's like, okay, this is how much money we have, let's save for another 6 months, let's do this, or let's go and speak to the mortgage people, it's whatever it is, get an idea of like what we can afford to buy. At least the other person knows you are doing something about what they've addressed. Does that make
Mm.
sense? I'm just using this one as an example because the house thing is like a common one. But yeah, it's definitely understanding that you were out of line as well. It takes two
Mm.
to be in an argument. And then we teach the sandwich approach. So you're sat over breakfast the next day, honey, I love you very much. You know that, this marriage is really important to me. However, yesterday, my brother said you said this to him and he got quite upset about it. It'd be great if you wouldn't say that to him again. And obviously, like this marriage is important. I'm sorry I got upset yesterday. I should have been more calmer, blah, blah, blah. So you use the sandwich approach. And that way
Mm.
you said something nice in the beginning, something nice at the end, and you spoke about your problem in the middle. And therefore, like, I can't remember if I shared with you, one of my clients were saying they've been using the sandwich approach for 2 years since once they started getting coached by me. And they've not had an argument with their boss, with their mom, with their friends, with the person they're chatting to for marriage. For 2 years, they've not had an argument with
My
anyone.
You did mention this. You did mention this. I think it's the third time you mentioned the sandwich effect, and I feel like I still need to implement it into my life within my relationships with my, siblings
Yeah,
and
it's,
my mom. Working on it. Working on it.
it's hard. It's hard. I think when the people that you're connected to the most, you have the shortest fuse. But that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards you more for being kinder to your family. Because it's very
Oh.
easy to be kind to friends or people in your circle because you're only going to see them for that little while and they're gone. They're not
Mm.
in your space. But the people who are in your space, consuming your space all the time, those are the people that you tend to lose your cool with faster, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely had some improvements in that area though, since but since we've been having better communication, funny enough, um, you know, I realize I think I was about to start a podcast with you one of the days, and I thought oh yes, and I said I didn't say hello to my mom properly. I didn't give salam
I
properly. You
remember,
remember
I
that
remember,
moment?
I remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I left the room, went downstairs to give my salam to my mom properly, gave her a hug, and she had the biggest smile on her face in that moment. I didn't get time to sort of tell you, but she was just so like amazed, and she was so happy, mashallah. And then I ran back upstairs. I don't know, I ran like this, but I ran like this upstairs. But she was so happy. And it makes such a difference when you communicate in the language that they see as that love language, right? That
Mm.
they want to hear and see. So that's something that I guess in marriages, and I guess people have divorces and things because communication is an issue. But speaking about other relationships as well, having that better communication will create healthier relationships with everybody.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, and there was something else you mentioned. So it was the communication, and then what was the
It was communication style. So it's basically how you need to find out the person that you communicate with, whoever it is. It could be a friend, it
yeah,
could be a spouse, it could be
mm,
a sibling, whatever. It's never too late, I think, to sit down and say, look. And there are some people that you just can't. Like you're just it's
yeah,
too far gone. Like you just have to do your pleasantries, say your salam, and just step away. Like there are some people that you can be banging your head off a brick wall and nothing's going to change. So I think sometimes you have to understand that that relationship has gone too far, that it just can't be repaired as well. So recognizing that I think is important as well. Shafina, I don't know what you think about
I just sometimes you just reflect back on your own life and thinking about what situations, what scenarios. Unfortunately, there are a number of sort of friendships or relationships, whatever kind of relationships I've had with some of my friends that I no longer talk to anymore.
that.
And it's just something's been done or said. And for me personally, I can't go back to where how things were. I'll always appreciate the times that we've had, the memories and everything like that. And often I might think about them. Like you think of people and you think, I hope they're well, but I kind of hope they're well through my du'as. Like, you just kind of do that because the what's happened, what's been said has been said, and I can't go back to that because I just think you crossed, and but at the same time, I'm not hating, I'm not angry, I just can't
Mm.
go back. But yeah, so there are sometimes
Mm.
certain things that you can't go back to.
Mm.
So
So what I'm hearing you say is that the relationship just wasn't healthy, and no matter how much you tried to communicate, it wasn't getting to a healthy place. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, I mean, okay, so there's that's one topic, but then also in terms of friends and stuff, certain things that have been said or something like that. The relationship was fine with that with my friends. There was just something that wasn't right, and it just a line was crossed, let's say that, and it can't be undone.
Mm.
And but at the same time, I don't hate or anything like that. I just think we can't go back to where we were anymore. So that's another thing. However, yeah, there have been times in the past where, for example, a situation, and I was trying to communicate in a way. I'll be honest with you, I don't think I was. I think because emotions had been, this is a bit personal, emotions had been shut down because of how things were handled on the other side. Um, like I said, I don't do well with anger. So, and that made me become more like I couldn't even communicate. I couldn't say anything. So I didn't say anything. And it just became a thing now because I thought if I say anything, I'm just gonna get it's just not gonna be good.
Mm.
So I don't want to really go into that too much. But yeah, communication is an issue, and how you deal with it and the anger for sure. And finally, yeah, sometimes that person or whatever situation you're in, whether it's a friend or relationship, whatever, spouse, uh, sometimes you can't see that person again in your trusted emotional space,
Mm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So even if they've tried, to make things better or whatever, it's never going to go back to how I had full trust in that person.
Mm.
But that's something. It doesn't mean you don't forgive the person. Does that make sense? Like you forgive and it's cool, but it's not cool for me to stay
Yeah,
because that bond is no longer
yeah.
what it was. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I was listening to one of Mufti Mink's biyans recently, and my misconception was that, especially if it's a family member, that it doesn't matter what they've said or what they've done, you're the sinner on the day of judgment. You will have to answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for not keeping in touch with that friend or family member, or especially if it's your direct blood. But what he was saying is, if you have tried to communicate with this person, and obviously remember your angels are noting everything down on your shoulders. If you have tried to communicate with this person, you've tried to reason with this person, it seems like they can't, or you can't agree on whatever it is, or even communication can't be smooth, then if you pass them in the street or you pass by, give your salam, but you don't have to be calling them every day. You don't have to be texting them every day. You don't have to be making plans with them every day. And my misconception a few years ago was the family should know everything that's going on in your life. Everybody doesn't need to know what's going on in your life. A select few people that you decide can get to know what's going on in your life. You don't have to be sharing it with everybody. Just because it's going on in your life, you're not doing anything wrong. So I think, oh, well, if
Mm,
everybody doesn't know what's going on, I'm hiding things. You're not.
no.
That's your, if you don't want. And I remember you were saying we were talking about some stuff. We were talking about just general business stuff. You're like, oh, you need to keep that under your hat until you do it. And I'm like,
Yeah, I said that to you. I was like, don't tell anyone. Don't say anything yet. You know, don't
yeah,
say anything.
yeah,
Because,
yeah,
and I think I even said just try not to tell me too much either, whatever, because, it's just yeah, it's just the way it is. But yeah, you can't tell everyone everything. No, that's for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Um
There's a
and
lot of misconceptions. Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying just a lot of misconceptions. And I think as you grow up, like maybe even like as you've grown up in different families, you've seen different communications and you've been told, oh, you must do this or you must do that. And then you have it stuck in your head that like from a child, I've been told you need to do this and you need to do that. And then it's not until you learn, that one of the sheikhs I listen to is Abdurrahman Murphy from, I think he's in Dallas, I believe. And he was talking about in his last lecture I was listening to, he was just talking about, just loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, communicating. So when you say you love one, you love someone for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? You hear that all the time. That's all to do with communication. Just, I love
Mm,
you for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I'm gonna avoid an argument. So the person who avoids an argument has a house in the middle of Jannah. So it's a clear hadith. So it's maybe applying your faith to your actions and goodness to your actions and thinking, well, I can't give this person what they want from me, but I can also, I also don't need to be having all these conversations that are just going to turn into an argument. So how do you deal with it? So loving that person for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and just showing love. It's like we want to get to Jannah. We think that we're going to get to Jannah for all the prayers that we read and all the good deeds that we do. But we only get into Jannah with the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the biggest thing is just to allow ourselves to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, allow ourselves to love the people in our lives, and just try and take away from that negativity. And obviously everybody knows, right? Anger is from shaitan. So if you're constantly getting angry, if you're standing, sit down. If you sit down, lie down. That doesn't work. Drink water. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, step away from that. And it is. I don't know what you think about it, but do you think part of your communication style or your anger or your kindness or your understanding, is that something that you can build on? Do you think that's nature? Maybe life teaches you lessons and you start adjusting? Like, what do you think about that?
so I will speak about myself. So many years ago, I think I had a really short fuse temper or something like that. And I actually met this lady recently, well, a little while than recently. But anyway, we were having a conversation recently, yesterday, whenever I was in London. And she actually worked with my father. And she was saying, you're just like your dad, the way I was and or how I am. And she was saying, he was so lovely with everyone and everything. I don't know what was things with her, but she mentioned something about anger and stuff, and I said, yeah, there was a different side as well. And I sort of adopted that too. within my style. But I said it's taken me a number of years to make sure that I'm not that person anymore. That would just get very angry at things. And I think with any sort of friends, families, whatever, I don't get angry now. I'll just kind of like I go silent or I just, there, that happens. But with my siblings and stuff, I would get annoyed. I don't think I'd scream or shout, but you have a different tone when you're annoyed and you're like, why can't you just wash the dishes? Like that kind of thing. So I'm like, even with that, I'm just like, I, now I'm trying to be like, I'd appreciate if you could wash the dishes. Like I'm working on it. It's been many years from where I was before. Um, Apologies for that. I had a call come through and I didn't put my phone on Do Not Disturb. And so the whole frame has changed on here. But we were talking, I can't actually fully remember what we were speaking about, but I know that, again, the podcast to do with the communication. And that's a big issue when it comes to relationships and divorces and things like that. There's lack of communication. However, once you kind of figure out a way to sort of start communicating, hopefully, if it's not been too long, like you mentioned, someone else has 10 years of not the best communication, and then by then it's like, how do you undo that? It's very, very, very difficult. And I also feel I feel if you put up with stuff in the past, you have a less tolerance to put up with things in the future. Like
Yeah.
the chances are less as well. So hopefully communication is something that we can all learn sooner rather than later.
Mhm.
And I guess have that conversation. How do you like to communicate? It's very interesting because we go into situations or things like that, not understanding. Like I've learned so much from you, Naseem. Like I really appreciate it. We honestly, alhamdulillah, we go in situations thinking, oh yeah, I love this person, but actually we don't even think about everything else. Now, this kind of relates into another project I'm working on with my acting work, and it's a play. I can't go too much into details about it, but even there, it sort of explains if we go back to the basics of things and actually look at um, the love thing that's a separate thing, but we actually look at the compatibility. It is actually so, so important. So if you look at all the compatibility wise first and then think, okay, can we communicate in a similar manner? Or if we don't, can we work on that beforehand going forward? Do you know what I mean? Like if we work on all those things first, then think to possibly love that person later, if that makes sense. Not like we've mentioned this, Mufti makes sense. Mufti Mink said, oh, people go with their hormones first, their emotions first, without thinking, like, because your brain, it's a chemical imbalance, chemical thing, reaction in the brain. When you're sort of in love, your common sense or your sense of anything goes out the window. And science says, there is a block. So don't be too harsh on yourself if you have done that.
Mm.
I'm just saying. But now when you're seeing this, do question things. If you want things to change, you've got to change. You got to do things differently. That's what I feel. And it's like, okay, have that conversation again. How do you to communicate and actually communicate that as well? Because sometimes I feel being a woman, sometimes you're afraid to even ask and say these things. We think, oh, I don't know if it's a thing that when we're growing up from when you're younger, you got to respect your husband. You got to be like, this is your husband, da, 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 your husband. And he's like God's gift to earth or something. Do you know what I mean? And so I think, God, I'm having like a breakthrough right now. I feel that maybe there's been something that's been inside of my mindset or stuck within me somewhere that I'm not able to speak up and ask, or I wasn't able to. I think I'm very different now after everything. Uh, and that's something that's been planted in there. And I guess it comes to parenting as well. That's another topic.
Mm.
That's
Yeah,
another topic right there,
very
parenting.
much. Yeah, so very much your very much part of your surroundings. So your mindset is the people you hang out with the most, and obviously your parenting skills are what you believe that is basically true as you go through life. Now, there's no disrespect to parents. At the end of the day, you've got, unconditional love for your parents, but they don't know everything, and as time's moving on, as life is moving on, then there has to be some things that you adapt to and be fair. Yes, a daughter-in-law, sister-in-law, whatever, has these responsibilities. But again, back to the communication of what's your expectations? What can I provide? Where can we meet in the middle? And if those conversations are not had before you make it like a true commitment to someone, you're best stepping away because you can see you and that person are not on the same page. And yeah, and all these things will then lead to arguments. So I think that talking about communication style, absorbing that person in different situations,
Mm,
understanding how they deal with things. Are they quick to apologize? Are they quick to try and understand, all this, coming home with a bunch of flowers or coming home with this, and it's too little, too late. Do you get me? Because at the end of the day, you've already hurt that person many, many times, and for
yeah,
them
I,
to be able
that
to
happened.
trust you, it's going to be very hard for them to trust you again. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it works. Obviously, I'm not a guy, but from a woman's perspective, for me personally, I think once that emotional thing is snapped, in a sense, that's what I'm going to call it. There's this emotional bar. Once it's snapped and the piece is missing, so you can never put it back together because there'll always be a gap missing. There'll always be that, and in the long run, it's just going to get worse. For me, that's how I feel. Once that thing is gone, it's gone. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
yeah, it's sad. So we want to get our communication right from the beginning,
yeah,
and or if someone is not in the best place right now, see how you can work on your communication, and maybe have this conversation with your partner, spouse, and just be like, look, maybe we need to pay attention to this. We didn't do that. If we
yeah.
can both agree on it
Hmm.
and maybe work on ourselves, because often,
Yeah, yeah,
sorry, often it's something like I mentioned right now where I've just had that slight breakthrough that maybe there's something that was planted in my head as a child somewhere, that I've had this mindset that, don't say anything, you can't really ask it, which is the biggest thing that is so wrong. And that's something on me. So maybe if you guys can sort of work, look back on each other, yourselves, and think, okay, why am I like this? Where has this stemmed from? I mean, I'm not a specialist therapist person or anything, but when you take time to kind of work on yourself, you start to have these kind of breakthroughs
hmm,
in learning about yourself. So that's another
yeah,
thing as well.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And genuinely, if you say to this person that, look, you know, give me 3 months, give me 6 months, I'm going to put things into place. And if you don't see any changes, then I respect your wishes, whatever your wishes are. But if you're going to make adaptations to your life and you're going to start putting things in that your partner wants from you, whether you're male or female, and it could be vice versa. It could be that your husband feels that his wife is not listening to him, or just not taking his opinion into account, or not prioritizing some things that he wants to do in life. It could be anything. But yeah, so the missing piece that you're talking about, just to give you the breakthrough back, if there was a genuine conversation, like we've had this conversation before, and many, many different situations, that if you've asked for, right, okay, let's fix this, let's talk about it, like, this is what I need, can you do this? And then a month later, nothing's changed. 2 months later, nothing changes. Then you're another 6 months goes by in that relationship and things are worse than they were before the person promised to make those changes. Then of course that the want for that person to stick around is not going to be there. And obviously, the worst thing in the world is to get divorced. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like it. We know from the Deen perspective, it's best to stay together, but only if, in my opinion, only if both couples are willing to put the effort in to make that relationship work. Because why should one person be making so much effort in everything and the other person's not making any effort? Personally believe they don't deserve to stay in that relationship or be in that relationship, because it's only one, whether it's male or
Mm.
female, putting in all the hard work, or the other person thinking, yeah, this is what I need to do to make this relationship work, but then isn't putting the effort into it at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, so again, it all just depends on if you can reflect back on. So when I do my support session, I talk about, when you met, what did you like about each other? What did you do for each other in the beginning? Because obviously everything is as much nice in the beginning of relationships, and as time goes on, you sort of fall into bad habits. And some people will say, actually, no, do you know what? I'm If I don't work hard at this, I'm going to regret it. And there have
Mm.
been occasions where it can be flipped around, but only if the other person
Is
in that
wanting as
marriage
well.
is willing to do it as well. So you can say, actually, I see change. Because if you love that person, you see change, you'll be very quick to forgive them because you see that change. But if there's no change, and things are getting worse, then you can see that your life is more difficult because the other person is not willing to at least meet you in the middle.
The key thing you said, that if you love that person,
Yeah.
sometimes that love can go
Yeah.
when the emotional bond trust is broken.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was actually with the same lady that I mentioned with my father. We were somehow got into a topic in conversation, and she mentioned, she goes, "Yeah, you got to have the respect and trust, otherwise there's no love." When she said that, I was like, "I know, right?" So it's people are aware of it, and it is a thing, and it's important to have all of those things together, and with everything communicate. Like even with ourselves, we're working a lot more together now, and inshallah, we're going to do a lot more together. And it's good that we have the understanding. And I know that I had this manager. She's a friend of mine now, and she talked about the norming, forming, storming, performing thing. So it can happen in anything, in marriages, in friendships, work, people that are working together. We've got friendship as well, sisterhood, whatever. Like a few different types of relationships here. But yeah, if both parties are aware that okay, this could happen, so we need to make sure if it gets that stage, we've got to communicate. So
Yeah.
definitely a lesson to
Yeah.
reflect on.
Even just us, your life is hectic. My life, you're sat in the car doing your podcast.
Sat in the car and I've got another meeting to go to.
Yes, so it's like still, if you've made a promise to make it happen, then
Yeah.
obviously you're putting the time in. Maybe you can't make the exact time or I can't, but the next available time, we put the effort and put the work in because we believe, we really do, I really do believe that these Road to Happiness podcasts, you know, reach the people that need to hear them, that can make a difference in their life. That's like my biggest thing that, why do I match to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There's nothing else that I want out of this. Yes, it's my work and I've been doing it for 25 years, but every
Yeah.
time I speak to a couple, like even today, I took on a new client and I got a bit emotional. I was like, I promise to work really, really hard to find you the best person that I can. I can't connect your heart to him. I can't make you fall in love with him. But for you to meet a good person, decent person, I promise I'll do that. And that's like the least we can do to try and find good people in the community to then help them find a companion. So,
Okay.
yeah.
That's a sweet note to end on there.
Yes, for sure. Inshallah. Listen, you have safe travels wherever you're going next.
Yeah.
So you're always on a plane or a train or a car or
Yeah.
something. You're always somewhere. But
I'll be on a plane soon. By the time this podcast is out, I'll be in a different country, inshallah, safely.
bless you. But anyway, as always, Shafina, great to catch up with you, and I'll see you on the next round of our next Tuesday podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening and taking part in today. And thank you for all the great questions that you sent through. It gives us loads of ideas for our topics as well. So all the best. Jazakallah.
Thank you so much for taking the time out to listen to this podcast. If you found this beneficial, give this video a like and hit the subscribe button to be notified for the next episode.